It's another Sunday, and it's another episode of the Taoist Corner podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Stewart, and welcome. It's a very cold Sunday morning here in Fort Worth, Texas. It's been icy, snowy, basically for weeks, and we're ready for it to be over. Hope you're doing okay. I hope you enjoy the show. Thanks for being here. If you haven't been here before, I am the founder and chief editor of The Taoist Online, as well as Project Jade, two amazing publications that you should definitely check out. That's thetaoist.online and projectjade.net. One of them is brand new, just started up last week, and we're moving into week 2 of articles. If you're wondering and curious about what this Taoist thing is, then it is an ancient Chinese philosophy and religion started about 2,500 years ago by a gentleman named Lao Tzu. He was, legend has it, a librarian in the emperor's court, and he decided that he was kind of done with warring states and politics and decided to retire out on the countryside, never to be seen from again. So he got on back of a water buffalo and rode off. But as he was crossing the border, a guard stopped him, asked him to spend the night and write down some words of wisdom. And he wrote this, the Tao Te Ching, which is apparently see-through in my green screen, if you're watching this live on YouTube or the recording afterwards. We'll see this see-through book. The Tao Te Ching is a collection of about 81 chapters, poems, that explain how to live our lives in harmony with Tao. If you're wondering what Tao is, it is existence. It is all of nature. It flows through everything. And if you've ever seen Star Wars, kind of like the Force. Yeah, kind of just like that. So shout out to all the Star Wars fans. It teaches us how to relate to each other, how to get along, how to be a better you. It doesn't change you, right? Studying the Tao doesn't make you someone else. They don't want you to act any differently than what you are already, right? Become a better version of who you are. That's what Taoism teaches us. So what we do here every week is I work through this other see-through book, which is unfortunately green on the cover, 365 Tao by an author named Ding Ming-Dao. Great guy. He wrote a much longer book than the Tao Te Ching, 365 chapters, one chapter for each day, where he takes Taoist concepts and ideas and relates them to a more modern lifestyle, because as you may assume, ancient China in modern day, pretty different. Pretty different. So, as you can see on this screen here, is we work through each chapter and we'll talk about it. We're on chapter 97. 97 is encouragement. Each chapter begins with a little poem, then, and I'll read that for you. And then I'll read a very short 1 to 2 page chapter, and then we'll talk about it. So before we get into the chapters, though, make some quick announcements. As I just mentioned, Project Jade is up and running. This is week 2. We've got a whole week worth of articles for you planned out. 1 article per day, so that each article and each writer has their time to shine. They release at 3 a.m. Central Time here in Texas, which is just early enough for the Europeans to wake up and get a fresh new article. And what do we write about? Well, we write about Taoism, of course, but as also religion, philosophy, spirituality, veganism, some lifestyles, some self-improvement articles here and there. Anything that teaches you to, I would say, be a better you. Yeah, just like I did before. But it's funny that Taoism and really the concepts of those ideas of Taoism are found in everything. And I hope as we go through these chapters today, you can relate to some of them. And no matter what your religion is, no matter what philosophy you ascribe to, I hope you can find some truth today. All right. Well, I hope you enjoy the new setup. I'm trying something a little differently. I'm looking at some very bright white lights, trying to stare in the camera more. Got my green screen behind me on the new camera. And if you're watching this live, you won't see a whole bunch of stuff. But if you're watching this later, I'm going to add in some lower thirds and try and get some chapter markers in there so you can jump around if you want to. Yeah, check it out. Okay, guys, let's get into it. As I said, we're on chapter 97. We'll be here for around an hour. We'll do 5-ish chapters. We'll just kind of see how far we can get. And then we'll be done. Yeah. All right. Chapter 97. Encouragement. 1,000 miles from home, I opened the same prayer book. Some nights it was only obligation. Tonight it is comfort. It's best to be patient and persevering. Devotion may sometimes seem to be pure drudgery. Away from home, it's possible to gain a new outlook. Taken from its usual context, our commitment can stand out all the more brilliantly. Something that may have become like a bit in bridle may now be warm and comforting. That is why one should master one's emotions and use discipline to even out the ups and downs of impulse. When traveling, we are away from our usual surroundings, including those elements that suppress and restrict us. Nearly all of us have fears, frustrations, and inhibitions that we have acquired in the past. Time and distance help us to assess them more clearly. To overcome them takes courage and initiative. How can we do it if our very problem is fear and timidity? That is when we need a friend to help us and encourage us. They can give us the guidance and support to face our fears. Although they can neither live our lives nor solve our problems outright, they can provide an invaluable presence just when we most need it. Within ourselves, our daily devotions are the way to encourage ourselves to prepare. With others, encouragement is the way to be compassionate. So, friends, you ever come across stories of people who just shun society? They just don't want to be here anymore. You get fed up with whatever it is and they move out into the mountains and they just want to ignore everything forever. It might be easy to do that sometimes nowadays, with technology being what it is and politics being what they are, especially in the United States. It's easy just to shut it off, right? Why do I need friends? Why do I need anyone? I can just be happy alone and turn off my emotions and just be who I want to be. But here we learn maybe that's not the greatest idea. Maybe encouragement is a good thing. And maybe we should be encouraging to others, as others encouraging to us. It's not enough to just live alone. Sometimes humans are social animals, as I think it's obvious to see. If humans had evolved to live alone, I don't think we'd all be here right now. What are cities for? Yeah, there are benefits to money and goods and services and all that stuff, but You can grow your own food. You can live off the land. It's possible. We did it for thousands of years. Then why bother, right? Encouragement, key value there to helping others. And how devoted can you be by yourself, right? Who can check on you? Who can hold you accountable if you're by yourself, right? I know we talked in earlier chapters that every student needs a master and every master needs a student. It's one of those yin yang parasocial kind of relationships. You'd be surprised if you ever take a class how, especially a class in something like philosophy or theology, how different opinions can arise from reading the exact same text. Like, how is that possible? If I read the same thing and you read the same thing, then that seems so strange that they'd be so different. And sometimes that's discouraging. Sometimes you think that, well, I must be wrong because I don't share the same beliefs, right? I read the same thing, and why does this person sound so smart and I sound so stupid? I know that when I first started taking Taoism classes, I very much felt that way. I felt that my interpretations must be broken, right? My thoughts must be wrong somehow, because everyone else sounded so much smarter, right? They were older, they seemed wiser, they had a longer beard, right? More gray hair. But seriously, it's okay. And that's the great thing about Taoism and about the Tao Te Ching is it's written like poetry on purpose to be interpreted in multiple different ways. That's the beauty of it. Unlike, let's say, the Bible, where people will fight you tooth and nail on, what this passage means, and then make a whole nother denomination just because of the translation of a couple of different chapters. That is not how Taoism works. At least not for me. Taoism is very open. So, to be encouraging of those differences and of those different ideas is beneficial and helpful and allows you to live a more harmonious life with that person and even within yourself, right? That self-doubt and that beating yourself up all the time, that is, you're not encouraging yourself, which is strange to say out loud, but it's true. Your self-realization really depends on your ability to accept yourself for who you are. My teacher, George Thompson, calls it his underminer, his anxiety and his self-doubt. Trying to just say, well, that's not me, right? I don't have self-doubt, right? I'm just going to live my life with no self-doubt ever. That's also, excuse me, that's also not realistic, right? You can't be all happy all the time or all sad all the time. It's a part of you. So accepting that you have self-doubt and realizing that that is a natural flow of your learning will help encourage yourself, will raise your self-confidence, right? And I think that when you come to grips with that, when you understand this is who you are, and if other people can also come to grips with who you are and themselves, then we'll get along better and be happier and more joyful. Yeah. Can't we all just get along? Shout out. All right. Moving on. 98. Farewell. Don't worry. I'm not leaving. Just the chapter name for those of you who are listening on Spotify or Apple. Okay. Here we go. We part at the crossroads. you leave with your joys and problems. I with mine, alone, I look down the road. Each one must walk one's own path. People's paths come together all too briefly when sharing friendship, but that makes those times no less valuable. We must take advantage of support and sharing in a mutually beneficial way. Whenever we take from another, we should try to give back something. This is fundamental. No one should lean on another person or expect another to carry them a long distance down the road. Friends should walk side by side for as long as their journey carries them without becoming dependent on one another. There should be no obligation. If I can help someone do something, then I should do so without any hesitation or expectation of reward or debt. If there is something that I need to learn and my companion can show it to me, then I should accept it in humility. No one owns the knowledge. It should be freely shared. Parting is inherent in all meaning. Nothing lasts forever. Transience is what gives life poignancy. Every person is responsible for himself or herself. There is no road to walk but your own. I love how these chapters tend to connect into one another. Not only did we learn encouragement in the last chapter, but here we kind of learn how to be encouraging and how to share knowledge with those friends that we're trying to make connections with. In chapter 98 here, we learn that parting is bound to happen. You know, when you're in a relationship, there's really only 3 ways it's going to end. I mean it in a romantic relationship kind of way. You can either break up, you can get married, or someone can die, or divorce. And that's it. But one of those 4 things is going to happen. Right? If you're not married, you can add breakup. But if you are married, you take that one away and you put divorce. Divorce, death. That's it, right? If you're married. So you have to realize that as you enter into relationships, that you're headed towards one of these 2 ultimate conclusions. And that's okay. It is normal. It is completely natural. And the analogy here in chapter 98 is very beautiful, very pretty, where you have 2 roads. And sometimes those roads merge, become one road, and then they split off. Or maybe one road stops and the other road keeps going. But they can't go on forever. All roads come to an end. All journeys must stop. So when you lose someone or when you gain someone, it is important to remember that this is all temporary. All things are temporary. Even you are temporary. Even the thought of you is temporary. And that's okay. Life will continue. The yin yang will continue to spin forever and ever. And we should learn what we can from each other as we go forward. And that's the beauty of it. When you find something that you either want to learn or maybe it's beneficial for you to learn it from someone, as this chapter says, we should do so with humility. We should be accepting of that knowledge. We should not argue or fight that person to tell them they are wrong, because their journey is their own and your journey is your own. So there's a lot we can learn from each other. And if we just stop and stay quiet and listen, I think you'd be surprised on how much you could actually receive. and how receiving others will be to you. There's a chapter in the Tao Te Ching that talks about those who speak don't know, and those who know don't speak, right? You, as an expert in some field, should not go around yelling at people saying, I know better, look how much education I have, or look how much experience I have. You should politely, when asked, offer your knowledge, offer your wisdom, and then back away. You've said everything you need to say, and now everybody else needs to be left to make their own decisions. And some may say that's kind of a pacifist kind of lifestyle, but there's more to it than that. It's a simplification a little bit, but it's true. It's true. Leaders lead by example, not by micromanaging, right? I shouldn't have to stand over my team's shoulders at work to make sure they're doing their job. They should be able to see what kind of job I expect from them, because that's the job I'm doing. And it has worked. It's truth. Very real. Okay. Let's move on. Chapter 99. We're almost there, guys. One more chapter. 100. Almost. Oh, not yet. Okay. Chapter 99 is Homecoming. Where was Tao while I was gone? Wasn't I following it where I went? Do you think that there are two? After traveling a while, we come home to a familiar place. Only we often look at it in new light. Were things different while we weren't here? We experienced so many new and different things while we were gone. Wasn't that Tao too? How can there be so many differences? You might argue that a mountain is a mountain, but our attitudes towards it are changeable. If we mistake our subjective viewpoints as something that is solid, permanent, and never relative to circumstances, then we will have no end to our problems. However, if we always remember that everything is comparative, then we can move through life in a much more dynamic way. There are not two ways. There is only one. It is so vast that we can experience widely divergent aspects of it and imagine that we are in different realities. This is a misconception. We cannot outrun Tao, cannot be outside of it. It is only our viewpoints that change in the degree that we think we are in differing dimensions. In the river of Tao, we are like minnows that can never plumb the length and breadth of the water. So I have this analogy, and you've heard it in several videos by now, about the river. Water is the perfect analogy and example for Tao. I could go on and on with different stories that use water. And for some reason, dogs, but we'll come back to that later. In this chapter, it uses a minnow swimming upstream. And the minnow can be anywhere in that stream. It can be upstream, downstream, it can be swim to the left, swim to the right. It can go with the flow of the river. It can swim against the current. It doesn't matter, right? But the minnow cannot leave the river. Like, there is nothing outside the river in this example for the minnow, right? So pretend you are in a boat and you're going down this river and the boat capsizes and you're just like flailing about in the river and you're trying not to drown. Okay, you have a couple of different options, right? You have free will. You have choice. You can swim against the current, use a bunch of energy. You may still get where you want to go, right? But you're going to struggle. Or you can relax, let the river carry you downstream and still get where you want to go. But maybe you didn't have to struggle as much, or maybe a little slower than you expected. That's Tao in life, right? You cannot leave Tao. but you still have free will within it, right? Some people use, I've heard the term God's will applied to Tao, and I don't agree with that. If you do, that's okay. But yeah, I don't prescribe to that. Okay, but in chapter 99, it talks about traveling. Have you ever been to another country and realized how different things are over there? I had the chance to go to Italy a couple of years ago, and then in 2023, I got to go to London and Paris. And let me tell you, it is super, super duper different over there from my hometown here in Texas. So how can that be? How can everything be Tao, but yet be so different where we go? Well, if we go back to the river, rivers go on for miles sometimes, don't they? And sometimes a few miles up the river, the water is very clear. But down the river, the water could be murky and dirty and nasty, and there's different fish in there, and there could be snakes in one end, and there could be tadpoles in the other, and it's weird, but it's the same river, okay? Just because you moved to a different part doesn't mean you somehow left Tao, or that Tao runs differently in one place than in the other, right? It's all the same. It's all connected. You cannot remove yourself from Tao, just as Tao would never somehow vanish from you. It just doesn't work like that. But I love the way this chapter kind of explains it, right? There are no two ways here. There are not two ways. There is only one. It is so vast that we can experience widely diverging aspects of it and imagine that we are in different realities, but we're not. I promise. We are in the same reality, and we have to get along. If someone could hit a reboot button on the computer system, I sure would enjoy it right about now. If this is the Matrix, somebody wake me up. Or maybe don't. Maybe don't wake me up. I'm not sure. Right? Maybe we like having the wool pulled over our eyes. I don't know. Okay. Well, let's move on. And here it is. Our 100th chapter. We made it, guys. We did it. The first 100. Woo! Clap, 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 clap. And chapter 100 is imagination. Dun, dun, dun. All right. Let's get into it. Imagination is pale and fragile. Dreams grip with a false reality. Imaginations can build bridges. Dreams can deceive. When we dream, the experience is often deeply involving. Frightening dreams make us awake, trembling and sweating. Pleasurable dreams leave us with lingering desires. Certain dreams are from healing, a way for our minds to recircuit and adjust themselves. No matter what, these dreams have no objective reality in our waking world. Imagination is also a form of mental involvement. It is a way of projecting our thoughts into believable images to be contemplated and manipulated. We can play with our imagination, use it to inspire creative projects. Both imagination and dreams are similar activities of the mind, and yet they differ in the level of conscious participation that they permit. In the case of the dream, there is a total suspension of reality and consciousness, so there is little or no direction possible. There is no mode of control. By contrast, imagination is a tool through which we can make our lives better, different, and creative. By cooperating with it, we can achieve things that, quote, we never dreamed possible. So, I'm a pretty active dreamer. I have very vivid dreams. I remember my dreams obsessively for years. I was at a certain age, I was able to control my dreams fairly often, where you kind of realize you're dreaming while you're dreaming, and you are like, hey, maybe I can fly. Maybe I can slow down time. Maybe I can just wake up and force yourself to wake up. Not so much anymore, but I used to be able to. And imagination and dreaming here in this chapter really comes from the same place, the same part of that mind. And it's important to realize that both of those are useful in their own way, right? Here at the last paragraph kind of just gets at exactly what it means. Both imagination and dreams are similar activities of mind, yet they differ in the level of participation. In the case of a dream, here it is. By contrast, by cooperating with it, we can achieve things that we never dreamed possible. Right? That's the point of the chapter in that very last sentence. You can realize through dreams and through your imagination what your desires are, what your fears are. And if you pay attention and if you maybe meditate on them, contemplate them, think about them, you can understand where you're trying to go. And this is good. This is good. You don't want to just wander around aimlessly. It's okay to have goals. Yes, as a Taoist, we're supposed to be accepting of what things come, and we're supposed to be able to bend to situations and move. It doesn't mean we don't have goals. It doesn't mean that we don't desire to have a better job or be successful or raise a family or get married, right? We don't just say, well, screw it, see what happens. No, that's not human, right? We see a cool little toy in the window and we're like, I want that toy. Or we see a new car and we're like, man, that car is great. I want that car. Or, even, with people, you see a pretty person walk by and you're like, man, that person was hot. And that's okay, right? It's good to have goals. It drives you forward, and you can realize what those are through imagination, right? There's that old saying, if you can dream it, you can do it, right? If you can imagine it, you can do it. And if you lose all of your imagination, you ever met anyone who just has no imagination and how boring of a person they become, right? Like they just don't do anything. They just kind of sit there and they have no goals. Yeah, it's sad. It's real sad. So don't become that person, right? Keep hold of your imagination as you grow up. It's important, right? Keep dreaming. Reach for those dreams. Reach for the stars. Sounds cliche, I know. But it is real. It is true. And it's hard to sometimes remember to be that person when you grow up and you're so focused on family and your job and a career, and maybe you have some hobbies. It's hard to remember to take care of yourself. And you can't just give all the time. You have to take. The yin yang is two colors for a reason. It's white on one part and black on the other. It's a little bit of black inside the white, a little bit of white inside the black, right? They're both connected. They're both in each other. They're not completely separate. And they turn, right? One always overcoming the other soon overcoming the other one as well. So don't just take, don't just give, do both. Imagine who you are. Reach for the stars. All right, guys, moving on. Chapter 101. Concentration. We're almost there, guys. Okay. Concentration. Imagination, song, the soaring spirit, separate them to know them as aspects of the whole. Join them to know the mystery of totality. The mind, if focused, can become the most powerful force we know. Yet, for most of us, we are lost in the vastness of our own uncharted minds. We play around with different aspects, find certain modes that we can get by with, and leave the rest unexplored. Those who follow Tao do not do this. They want to explore all the dimensions of the mind so that they may find a wholly integral mode of consciousness. The primary means of exploration is through concentration of the mind. Practitioners first select an aspect and delve into it by daily focus. Only when they have fully understood do they go on. It is like studying. When you are first introduced to a subject, you must put your attention to work in order to master the knowledge. Such concentration leads to absorption, like mixing liquids together in a bottle. Once they are combined, they cannot be distinguished one from another. With concentration, all the various aspects of the mind can be joined together in one superconsciousness mode. Sound is the same as sight, taste is the same as smell, touch is the same as thought, and all that we are is identical with the spiritual energy that resides within us. In this high concentration, there is complete union, and we feel the joy of total integration with all our facets. Okay, there's a lot to unpack on this one. Let's talk about meditation. When I was young, I was a kid, you watch those cartoons, and meditation is basically like some, no offense, but some hippie sitting under a tree with like their hands like this, and they're like, all the time, right? And that's just how kids are taught. That's what meditating is, I guess. That's how I was taught. And so you grow up and you find these friends or people that you know, and they're like, oh yeah, I meditate all the time. I'm like, oh, maybe I should do that. And so you go in this, you go in your bedroom and you shut the door and you turn off all the lights. And the first thing you do is you fall asleep. Right? And you wake up and it's like, oh man, I fell asleep. So you try it again. And then maybe you got distracted and your mind was thinking about the day and, man, what am I going to make for dinner? And, school or work. And you're like, oh, I can't do this, right? Like I can't clear my mind enough to meditate, and you feel bad about it, right? I did. Like, why can I not do this, right? There's that term called monkey mind, where your mind just jumps from topic to topic to topic. And I used to think that was bad. I used to think something was wrong with me because I couldn't, bring my mind to really focus on one thing, right? I couldn't concentrate. But then as I got further into Taoism, you figure out that really anything is a form of meditation, right? Like meditation doesn't have to be sitting still in a quiet, dark room early in the morning, late at night, right? It can be walking. Walking can be meditation. It can be doing the dishes. It can be cleaning up the house, sweeping the porch, right? Anything that causes you to focus on the task at hand, that's your form of meditation. All right? So whatever that is in your life, whatever that is in your day-to-day activities, whenever you find yourself purely focused on something, that's the key to your meditation practice. Now, this book, 365 Tao, doesn't get into a lot of Chinese terms, but there is one that I will explain that has a hand in this, and it is called Wu Wei. Okay, Wu Wei. Wu Wei is doing something very naturally, right? It's doing things, it's effortless action. You can use, my favorite example is always Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, did these crazy, crazy things on the basketball court. I remember watching him play as a kid on TV and just thinking, how is this possible? How can he stay in the air for that long? And news reporters would ask him, they'd say, Michael, how is it possible that you do all these things? And you know what he said? I don't know. I just do it. Here's the key. It just comes naturally. Things that come naturally to you. You're not trying to do things. They're just happening, right? There have been studies done with sharpshooters, archers, right? And when they pull back or they take aim, their brains do this very interesting thing where several parts begin to become very, very quiet. And the parts that have to do with your eyes, your hearing, right, focusing, those kick on to great amounts, right? So your brain actually begins to shut things down so that you can concentrate on the task at hand. So you can, it is possible to live your life in this state of being. Now, it takes lots of dedication. I'm not doing it. I don't know anyone who is, but as Taoists, we believe that it is possible to reach this state where you are singularly focused on exactly what you're doing, nothing that has come before, nothing that will come after. You're only going to focus at this very instant. That is pure concentration, right? That is concentration. So it's tricky to, should you be able to concentrate while meditating? Absolutely. But is meditation sitting there and being still and trying to become some crazy Zen master? Maybe, but maybe not. Not for me. Not for anyone I know. I don't know. My brother once told me that he's able to, sit in his living room and stare at his wall for like half an hour on end. And that's super cool, right? Like, I wish I was that guy. Like, I wish I could, stare into the abyss forever and somehow reach this crazy form of enlightenment, but I can't do it. Like, I don't know how to do it. So my form of meditation is doing dishes, cleaning the house, which is great because I have to do dishes almost every day. Funny how that works out like that. But when I used to live in a house with a bunch of guys before I got married, I used to enjoy sweeping the porch. We lived by a street with a bunch of bars, so I would go out in the early, cool mornings and pick up the trash that was littered all over our front yard, or sweep this dusty old house. It was nice. It was calm and relaxing. I didn't know it at the time, but that's your form of meditation, my form of meditation. So what's yours? I invite you to think about your week, right? Think about your days. And you have something like that in your life where you could perhaps do it more often to focus a little more, a little stronger, concentrate, right? I think you do. I bet everyone does. Even if it's just your commute, right? You commute to work. You ever noticed how sometimes when you commute, you're like on autopilot? You just kind of show up. You're not thinking about the directions, even though you may work 45 minutes away, an hour away. You can almost subconsciously get your way there without thinking about, okay, well, here comes this turn. Ta-da! That's Wu Wei. Effortless action right there. Everyone does it. They just don't know about it. They just don't have a name for it. They know what it is. Okay, moving on. Chapter 102 is awareness. Outer eyes cannot see themselves. The inner eye is its own reflection. When we look, we can see many things, but the eyes cannot see themselves without the help of a mirror. We are not used to introspection. Although the followers of Tao say to look within to gain self-awareness, we will be confused if we use the attitudes formed by looking with our eyes. That is why it is important to make a clear distinction early on. Do not try to understand yourself with attitudes of physical seeing. Look within using inner vision. For centuries, people of many different cultures have referred to the mind's eye, or the quote inner eye, or quote third eye. These are all indications that there is a separate way of looking within. In meditation, it is important to discover and utilize this mode of introspection. We must go beyond thought, go beyond visualization, go beyond imagination, and actually open a part of the mind that most people leave dormant. This inner eye has a location buried deep in the brain. When it is opened, it is our way of receiving more subtle experiences than we receive in our physical states. Perhaps looking and seeing are misleading terms, after all. We don't necessarily see images through this inner eye. We gain direct awareness that is beyond the image. So we have to be aware of what's going on. And it doesn't mean awareness as in seeing. It means awareness in your mind, right? And there are lots of different examples of this that we cover in the chapter, right? The mind's eye, the inner eye, the third eye. But there is a way to experience things internally that is not describable through words, right? There are situations and circumstances that you can feel, but you can't necessarily talk about. In fact, chapter 1 of the Tao Te Ching actually says that the word Tao in and of itself is not Tao, right? You cannot, through words, express what Tao is. Tao is just a name that a person chose to make a name, make it easier to talk about, right? It's a very human thing to do. We need to name things. When we name things, we can separate them out, right? This is Tao, and this is a tree. So through self-cultivation, through meditation, you can figure out how to experience these undescribable situations. I talked about my brother earlier, and he told me once, if you pick a point on a wall and stare at that wall for 20, 30 minutes, that wall will look different to you. And he's not kidding, right? I did it a couple of times. Not my favorite form of meditation, but it happens. Things begin to feel different. Your body touching whatever you're sitting on begins to feel a little different. It's not a loss of circulation, of course. You're not you're not making your legs go to sleep or anything. It is, you hear things that you wouldn't normally hear, and you notice things you wouldn't normally notice, and you're able to just really zone out everything else besides what's happening right there. And awareness, as this chapter is called, is a way to describe that moment, right? When you reach that point in your self-cultivation, your meditation, where everything has kind of faded away or faded off, that is a level of self-realization that you're striving for, right? And it is a real thing. It sounds very hippy dippy. I get it. Doesn't sound real. I used to go to church all the time with a bunch of Christians, and I had people who they would pray for like half an hour, right? And they would swear that after so long of prayer that they would also begin to feel things differently. They'd hear things or see things differently. Not, maybe not actually seeing something, right? They're not having hallucinations, but there's something there in all cultures, in all religions. They all have this practice of focusing, right? Of sharpening the mind's eye. And when you do, you're able to discover things or come aware of things that you wouldn't normally be able to do. And that's what this chapter is talking about, right? That moment of awareness you can reach. It is a real place that you can go, that you can obtain. And as we were saying earlier, some people think that you can always be there. You can live your whole life in this awareness state. You can call it enlightenment. You can call it nirvana. You can name it whatever you want to, right? Words are not inherent to things, so make up your own name for all I care. But it is a real place, and you can get there mentally. I hope you enjoyed today's stream. I hope you enjoyed the podcast if you're listening to it. You can find it on a ton of podcast networks. I switched my podcast provider this week, so it's everywhere now. Obviously on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and everywhere in between. I am your host, Patrick Stewart. Thank you so much for attending the Taoist Corner podcast. Please, if you have some spare time, feel free to make a donation. We use it all for the authors to get more writers and articles paid for on Project Jade. And I tip my volunteer crew very handsomely. So please, 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 if you are led, if you enjoy what I do, if you enjoy what the Taoist Online does, please feel free to make a donation. And I will see you guys next Sunday, 9 a.m. every week right here on YouTube. Have a good one.